I helped this guy get noticeably leaner in just 60 days while only losing about 10 pounds, all while using the same principles that I used to lose 50 pounds myself in just 4 months. But the truth is, most of this is probably stuff you've already heard before. Eat more protein, track your calories, lift weights, blah, blah, blah. The problem is nobody organizes it into a setup you can actually follow. So, if you want to start losing fat consistently, I'm going to answer the 5 biggest questions people have when they're trying to lose fat, and by the end of this video, you'll have a complete system to set everything up. Now, you've probably watched a million things online about fat loss already, but out of all the things you've ever watched, have you ever seen Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince? It doesn't matter if you haven't, you're still gonna get this. But there's a scene where Harry has to make a potion, and everyone in class gets the same textbook to follow the same recipe. But Harry ends up with this old beat-up version that has all these handwritten notes in the margins from someone who had already gone through the process before him. And while everyone in class is struggling to make the potion the textbook way, Harry starts making all these little adjustments from the notes in the margins, and he ends up being the one that successfully makes the potion. And honestly, this is a great way to think about fat loss because there's a lot of textbook advice that you're gonna hear online about calorie deficits, macros, meal plans, all that stuff. But after coaching people through this in person and online and losing weight myself on multiple instances, I realized that there are all these little notes that come from real world experience that just make the process work better. So let's start with the first question everyone has: where do I even start? So before you start cutting calories or changing your diet, you need a starting point that's actually backed by numbers so you're not just going in blind, because one of the biggest mistakes people make when they're trying to lose fat is that they immediately start cutting food without actually knowing how much they're eating or how many calories they're even burning in the first place. And to figure this out, the website I've been using for the last 10 years has been tdeecalculator.net. I've tried a bunch of newer fancy versions over the years, but this is the one I always come back to and the one I still walk clients through. So once you get to the website, it's pretty simple. You're going to plug in your gender, your age, your current weight, and your height. But here's the first coaching note in the margins. When you get to the activity level section, this is where a lot of people accidentally overestimate how many calories they burn, because people will look at it and think, well, I go to the gym 5 or 6 times a week, so I should probably pick heavy exercise. But here's the problem. You actually don't burn nearly as many calories lifting weights as most people think you do. And when I used to work in gyms, I'd see this all the time. People would say that they train 6 days a week, but half the workout was spent talking, checking their phones, standing around between sets, which means their actual daily calorie burn wasn't nearly as high as they thought. So instead of basing your activity level mostly on the gym, I want you to base it more on your overall lifestyle and job activity. If you work a desk job and spend most of your day sitting, you're probably closer to sedentary. Lightly active would be something like a teacher that stays on their feet, get a few steps in throughout the day. Heavy exercise is like if you work construction or manual labor, you're swinging a hammer and walking around carrying heavy stuff, so you're burning a lot of calories. An athlete, well, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? You're an athlete, you're a machine, you're just burning fuel all day. So your maintenance will be really high. Now you'll notice how these numbers climbed up with each level, and this matters because if you overestimate your activity level, the calculator is going to overestimate your calories, which means you'll probably end up not losing weight or even worse, gaining. So the level of activity should be based off of your job and not how many times you hit the gym. Now all that's left is your body fat percentage, but here's another coaching note. A lot of people think that losing weight is just about seeing the scale go down. But what we actually want is to lose body fat while holding on to as much muscle as possible, because those are two completely different outcomes. You can lose a bunch of weight and still not really look leaner if too much of that weight comes from muscle loss. So you don't have to be obsessed with the scale as long as your body fat percentage is going down. And to figure this out, it doesn't need to be perfect. You're not trying to scientifically lab test yourself here. You just want a realistic estimate so you can create a better setup moving forward. And what I usually tell people to do is just either use a smart scale or just get a rough ballpark estimate. You can buy smart scales pretty cheap online, and a lot of commercial gyms have them laying around. Now, I have had people tell me before, Coach, I use a smart scale, but I feel like my body fat percentage is actually a little higher than what it says. And that does happen sometimes. So if you want to double check it, look up a body fat percentage chart, kind of like this one right here. Pause the video for a second and compare the image to roughly what you look like right now. And keep in mind, men and women carry body fat differently. So just make sure that you're comparing yourself to the right chart. Again, we're not trying to be perfect here. We just want a ballpark number. And the reason I'm not too obsessive about getting the exact perfect body fat percentage is because later on, when we calculate your protein intake, we're going to build in enough margin that you're still going to be in a good spot, even if your numbers are slightly off. So don't overthink this part. Get close enough, move forward, and keep the process simple. Now, once you plug everything in, the first number you're going to see is your maintenance calories. And this is basically the amount of calories your body needs to just keep this going. Now, this is usually the only number people focus on when trying to lose fat. They'll take their maintenance calories, cut them down a little bit, and then just try to eat the same number every single day. But here's the other coaching note I've learned from experience. Over time, I actually stopped focusing so much on the daily calories and started paying more attention to the weekly calories instead. Because your body doesn't really care if Tuesday was perfect and Thursday wasn't. What matters more is the overall weekly calorie intake across the entire week. And this completely changed the way I approach dieting because it made the process feel way more flexible and realistic long term. And we're gonna go more in depth later on. Okay, now that we know where to start, the next question becomes, how long is this actually going to take? So when I was training people in person, one of the first things I'd always have them do before starting a diet was decide how much weight they wanted to lose and how fast. Because people usually have an idea of a goal weight they want, but not really sure of how to get there within a given time. So most people start a diet without deciding how long they realistically expect the process to take. They just start cutting food, doing cardio, weighing themselves every morning, and just kind of hoping that they'll eventually get there. And it's kind of like trying to drive somewhere without ever putting the destination into your GPS. You're moving, you're going, but you have no idea what the ETA is, whether you're on time, or what delays might happen along the way. And this matters a lot more than people think, because think about it like this. If I want to lose 20 pounds, I could try to lose it over 5 months, or I could lose it in 60 days. And those are two completely different experiences mentally. One might be, I just want to get my weight down whenever, but another might be, I need to get ready for my wedding in 2 months, which is a completely different level of pace, expectation, and urgency. And if you don't decide that ahead of time, every week can start feeling emotionally random. So one week the scale drops and you're feeling motivated, but the next week progress might slow down and suddenly you think the diet isn't working. But when you already know, okay, I might not have lost weight this week, but I lost the weight I needed for the month, you stop panicking every time progress isn't perfectly linear. And in order to do this, I'll show you using myself as an example. So before I started dieting, I looked at the body fat percentage chart and I realized I was somewhere around 25 to 30% body fat. And if I wanted to get lean and cut up, I'd have to be closer to 10 to 15%. Now, based on that, I estimated that I probably needed to lose around 50 pounds total. There's a way to figure this out. So from there, the next question became, well, how fast do I actually want to lose those 50 pounds? Because if I only lost around 4 pounds per month, the sustainable way, realistically, I was looking at almost a year plus of dieting once you account for stalls, bad weeks, holidays, all of that. And I did not want to do that. So instead, I pushed for a faster rate of fat loss. I figured if I could average closer to 10 pounds per month, realistically, the process would probably take me somewhere around 5 or 6 months, maybe 7. I actually ended up doing it in 4 months, which didn't surprise me. I'm awesome. But mentally, I was already prepared for it to take longer. Now from here, we can finally decide how aggressive or moderate you actually want your calorie deficit to be. And the easiest way to think about this is almost like choosing the difficulty setting for your diet. You can go slow, medium, or fast, or another way to think about it is easy, medium, or hard. I actually put this in my program to make this way easier to calculate. So a smaller deficit, around 15%, is usually going to feel a lot easier to stick to. You'll probably lose somewhere around 2 to 4 pounds per month, but the trade-off is that the process is slower. A moderate deficit, around 25%, is usually the sweet spot for most people, and that's generally around 4 to 6 pounds per month for a lot of people, while still feeling relatively manageable. And then a more aggressive deficit, around 35%, is where fat loss starts speeding up pretty aggressively. And that's where you might see 6, 8, sometimes even 10 pounds per month, depending on your starting weight. But every level has a trade-off. The slower you go, the easier the process usually feels, but the longer you have to stay locked in. The faster you go, the shorter the process can become, but the more discipline, structure, and consistency it requires day to day. So just choose the pace and difficulty level of the process before you even start. But how do you actually stick to this without burning out. Well, this next step is what stopped me from feeling like every small mistake completely ruined the diet. Because if you've ever dieted before, you probably know exactly what this feels like. There's always this feeling that everything has to be perfect. Every meal has to fit the calories. Every day has to go exactly according to plan. And the second something doesn't, you feel like you blew the diet. But the thing that started changing for me was shifting the focus away from perfect daily calories and paying more attention to the weekly calories instead. And that's the number right under your maintenance calories, your weekly calories. Because most people think that fat loss is driven by being perfect every single day. Like if you go over your calories one day, you somehow ruin the diet and you got to restart again on Monday, right? But again, your body doesn't really care if Tuesday was perfect and Thursday wasn't. What matters more is the overall calorie deficit accumulated across the week. And this was perfect for me because life doesn't always go according to plan. So some days you're going to be a little bit over, and trying to force every single day to look exactly the same is usually what makes dieting feel mentally exhausting in the first place. So once I started looking at fat loss this way, the next thing I started doing was structuring my calories more around my actual schedule instead of trying to force every day to look identical. This is otherwise known as calorie cycling. And what I started doing was giving myself higher calorie days and lower calorie days throughout the week. And this did three really important things mentally. First, it gave me more flexibility. Like if I wanted to go out to eat, I could line that up with a higher calorie day instead of feeling like I completely ruined the diet. It also helped a lot with training because as you start dieting harder, your energy naturally starts dropping a little bit. So having higher calorie days throughout the week gave me days where I felt fuller, had more energy, and just felt normal. And one of the biggest benefits was that it gave me little breaks throughout the week where I didn't constantly feel like I was dieting all the time. So personally, what I started doing was structuring higher calorie days on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then lower calorie days the rest of the week. Now, this doesn't have to be super structured like that either. You can also adjust this in real time depending on what happens throughout the week. So let's just say you're following a normal calorie deficit, but Friday night, your friends randomly want to go out to eat. So you go out, you enjoy yourself, and maybe you end up going over your calories by 500 or so. Now, what most people end up doing is thinking, well, I already messed up the diet. And Saturday goes off the rails, Sunday goes off the rails, and then they tell themselves they're going to start again on Monday. But if you understand weekly calories, you realize you don't actually have to do that. If you go over by 500 calories on Friday, you could just shave a little bit off on Saturday, get right back on track on Sunday, and then the week still works overall. So instead of feeling like every little mistake completely resets your progress, dieting starts to feel a lot more flexible, which naturally brings up the next question. I get this all the time. What do I actually eat? Because you've probably heard people tell you to cut carbs, avoid fat, eat clean, go keto, go carnivore, and after a while, it just starts feeling like every food is either good or bad depending on who you're listening to. But one of the biggest mindset shifts you'll make is realizing that your body doesn't really see food the way that you do. It just sees numbers. Calories, protein, carbs, fats. Are you hitting the numbers? And once you understand those numbers, the food itself becomes a whole lot less confusing. And this is one of the biggest breakthroughs I had on my third time dieting. The first couple times, I was so focused on getting as much protein as possible, because that's what everyone tells you to do, that I barely ate any carbs or fats. So I was constantly low energy, never really enjoyed my meals. And by the end of the diet, I was just completely over it. The third time around, I actually balanced all three macros, and the difference was night and day. I had more energy, enjoyed my meals a lot more, and it felt like something I could actually keep doing. So think of macros as giving each calorie a different job. Protein helps you stay full and hold on to your muscle while you're losing fat. Carbohydrates give you energy, especially for your workouts, and fats help support things like hormones and overall health. Could you lose fat without worrying about your macros? Absolutely. But dialing them in makes the process feel a whole lot better. Now, in my program, I actually built a dashboard where you just plug in your body weight and body fat percentage, and it'll calculate all of this for you automatically, so you don't even have to think about it. But if you're doing this yourself, here's exactly what I'd recommend. 1 gram of protein per pound of lean mass, not body weight, that means your weight without the fat. 0.3 grams of fat per lean mass for men, 0.4 for women, and the leftover calories you can just eat in carbs. Now, your carbs can come from pretty much anywhere, but you'll probably feel your best if most of them come from foods like potatoes, rice, oats, fruits, beans, vegetables, foods that actually keep you energized and satisfied throughout the day. But if you want to have the occasional chips and fries, then go ahead. It's all right. The reason I usually steer people towards foods like potatoes, oats, and fruit isn't because chips or fries are bad. It's just because when you're dieting, you're already eating less food and chips and fries aren't very filling. So I'd rather you use those calories on foods that actually keep you full for longer, because the hungrier you are, the harder it is to stick to the diet. Now, one last coaching note and we're moving on. Carbs are cash money. They're underrated, but different carbs do different jobs. So if staying full is your biggest struggle, build your meals around vegetables first, then fruit. If you need quick energy before a workout, lean more towards simpler carbs like bread, bananas, rice, gummy bears. And if you want foods that keep you full for longer while helping you hit your fiber, lean more towards complex carbs like potatoes, oats, beans, vegetables, and whole grains. Don't worry about the perfect secret food. Just pick the one that you like and that helps you hit your numbers. Now, if you follow the first 4 steps, you'll absolutely lose weight. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna get lean. Now let me show you what I mean. Let's go back to this transformation I showed you in the beginning. This guy didn't actually have a lot of weight to lose. In fact, he was already at a healthy weight for his height. The problem was that he didn't have enough muscle underneath the fat he was trying to lose. And this is one of the biggest misconceptions I see today, especially now that GLP-1s have become so popular, because people assume that the goal is simply to make the number on the scale go down. But looking lean and weighing less are two completely different things. That's why people can lose 20, 30, maybe even 40 pounds and still not have the look they were hoping for. I've heard it described as a thin, sickly look, because losing fat reveals muscle, but it doesn't create it. And that's exactly why strength training matters. People think that you lift weights to burn more calories. You don't. You lift weights to give your body a reason to hold on to its muscle while you're losing fat. And here's a really cool part, especially if you're newer to lifting. In the beginning, your body can actually build muscle while you're losing fat. And that's why transformations like this can happen even when the scale doesn't move very much, because Isaiah only lost around 10 pounds here. But look at the difference. If all he had done was lose 10 pounds without building any muscle, he wouldn't have looked anything like this. So how do you actually build that muscle? Because it has nothing to do with the best exercises or how often you go to the gym. It's walking into the gym week after week and giving your body a reason to change. Now, you've probably heard that you need to progressively overload in the gym, and that's true, but here's my coaching note. One of the most common things I used to hear as a trainer was, I'm just going to stick with this weight until I get stronger. The problem is, well, that's backwards, because you don't wait until you get stronger to increase the weight. You get stronger because you're gradually asking your body to do a little bit more than it did last time. So what usually happens, someone starts doing dumbbell curls, they grab a 15-pound dumbbell and use them for weeks, sometimes even months, waiting until that they magically feel stronger. But your body has no reason to change if nothing about the workout changes. And this is told in the story of Milo. The story goes that he carried a calf every day, and as the calf slowly grew into a bull, Milo got stronger because the challenge increased little by little over time. And that's exactly how you should think about your workouts. So every time you do an exercise, your goal is just to be a little bit better than last time. Maybe that's one more rep. Maybe it's just another 2.5-pound jump. It doesn't have to be a crazy jump. It just has to give your body a reason to adapt, because at the end of the day, your muscles don't care if you're ready. They only care about one thing. Was I asked to do more than last time? So what does that actually look like? Personally, I found that for most people, 2 to 3 hard sets per exercise is plenty. As far as the reps go, I like 6 to 8 reps. It's a nice middle ground. The weight is heavy enough that you're encouraging your body to get stronger, but it's not so heavy that every set turns into a max effort. And the simple rule that I like to follow is this. If you can get all 8 reps, add a little bit of weight next time. If you only get 6 reps, work your way up to 8, then increase the weight again. And that's all you gotta do. You don't have to get crazy, beast mode, balls to the wall, a million different exercises. Just be consistent with that rule every single time you step in the gym. Now, if you're wondering what are the exact exercises you should actually be doing, you might be surprised to learn that you really only need like 7 to build muscle and get lean. So if you want to see what those are, make sure to check out this video right here.